Dr. James Bixler, and I've been invited today to talk about a topic I think is really important, and that is mental health or diagnosis forever? I think that's a really important topic in our culture, particularly as awareness of mental health issues grows. I think that's fantastic. I'm very excited about our society to see us taking mental health more seriously. Our mental, emotional, and relational health is something that has entered the zeitgeist of our culture. Like, there are problems, and people are starting to realize that and be more open to talking about them without shame. I think that's really, really good. I think it does leave us with a lot of questions. And one of them I get really frequently is this going to be with me forever? We need to answer that question with the complexity it deserves. I think for most people, my answer to that would be a resounding no. I don't think those things are forever. We know that for most people, they may struggle with mental health issues over a long time, but those evolve and change. Treatment works. I think there's a lot of confusion about what diagnosis is and how we integrate that into our personal identities and how society, the term I hear a lot is how society labels me. I think those are important things to think about and discuss. I think one of the things we need to process is, how do we take knowledge that we've studied, that is researched, that is expertise, and when it enters into culture and cultural awareness, how does that transition happen? And so let me give you an example of that. I think there are a lot of people, when they think about, well, this is my diagnosis, that what that means in our culture is very different than what I would mean as a clinical psychologist. I think specifically, one of the things that I would like to raise in mental health awareness around this topic is, what is the purpose of diagnosis? Why do we do it? I think for a lot of people, it becomes a label, and they feel like it becomes a label in society. And that label is a weight. It feels like it reinforces. It feels like it oppresses. It feels like it takes away and limits. And what I want to say is that was never the intended purpose of diagnosis. And I think that's been lost in translation from the professional community to the growing awareness of mental health issues in our society. So it might be valuable to do some talking and understanding of, like, well, what is the purpose of diagnostic? What is the purpose of diagnosis? Look, there's a lot of people in the mental health profession, very well-respected people, who would say, we don't like diagnosis. And yet we still have it. And I think as I've had those conversations with other professionals, other psychologists, I've had those conversations with all kinds of mental health professionals with all kinds of different licenses. And the theme that emerges from me is actually, they don't like the labeling process either. What it becomes when that diagnostic gets taken out of professional context and gets taken into people's personal context, their community context, that they don't like that dynamic that emerges of it being a weight for people, a chain, an anchor weighing them down, that they can't escape these really deeply hard things because they decide it's who they are or what they are, or it's fundamentally a part of them. That's what most professionals I talk to, that's kind of what emerges for them. And it's been very interesting as I've begun to have these conversations with professionals in the community. And it's really struck me, but that's never been a purpose of diagnosis, to provide people with a label. So let's talk about what the purpose of that is for people. First and foremost, diagnosis is always supposed to have been a way to inform treatment. It's supposed to have been a way to help people say, oh, a lot of the things that are really hard for me, other people experience. And look at what has helped those people. It's for me as a professional to have some sort of idea of, wow, there's some real research. onto what helps my clients with depression. There's some real evidence about what helps people with anxiety. There's some real evidence about how to help people not live under the shadow of their trauma. That's important. That informing treatment, that providing help, that providing a way back to the shore through this really dark sea that feels inescapable. It's important to understand and navigate where we are. And diagnosis primarily was supposed to be a lighthouse. Hey, over here, there's something that works for you. Come this way. I think that's an important quality of diagnostics that has gotten lost in the haze of like, well, this is who I am, rather than this is what will help me. I think for the most common mental health struggles in our country, that's a really important element, and a really important element for everybody struggling with mental health. A diagnosis should inform treatment, effective, evidence-based treatment that's a lighthouse and that can help you. 2, it's a professional language. Sometimes we as professionals need to be able to quantify or talk about what's going on in people's mental, emotional, and relational health. And having a professional language so that I could talk to a medical doctor, and that medical doctor could talk to a teacher, and that there is some kind of professional language where all three of us can come together and have some common definitions. I think that's something that gets lost when the community and in our personal context, we start to adopt diagnostics or labels. We miss that this is really supposed to be a way, in some ways, for professionals to communicate, again, to better get access to treatment for people. I think if we understand some of these core important reasons that we diagnose, then we can help educate the public that if we shift from lighthouse to label, that's problematic for everyone. It's kind of like flipping the light off, and it creates a lot of hopelessness. And that's important to recognize, that in this awakening of mental health in our culture, that awakening isn't always done perfectly. And that's one of the reasons I'm so passionate about this topic. I do believe diagnosis is important. I do believe people struggle with real, quantifiable mental illness. I also don't think those things have to be forever. If I believed that, I wouldn't do what I do. And I know that a lot of professionals believe the same thing. Change is possible in our mental, emotional, and relational health. Not just possible, but needed and necessary. It's hard, but possible. And if people can change, if people come to shore, if people find hope, if they find those treatments that work for them, and those treatments are working, then the label doesn't apply anymore. The diagnosis, in some ways, has lost its value once we're getting the treatment, and the treatment is working and works. I think there are some important contexts to talk about here. There are some kinds of mental health issues that in my profession we call severe, persistent, or pervasive. And that really just means they are likely to last a long time. And probably their causes are outside of like contextual events. So sometimes we can be born with neurological challenges. Sometimes we have genetic predispositions. Sometimes people get traumatic brain injuries, and it's a structural or chemical issue. And some of those things need to be addressed in a more long-term treatment model. Many of those things do remit with age, and by remit, I mean soften, lessen. But they still seem to have some sort of presence. And those are kind of, we would think about like pretty severe mental health disorders. pervasive. They impact us all over the place, and they stay with us for a long time, either because of our genetics or a structural issue, a neurobiological issue, brain injury, um, early neurological development issue. I think those things, diagnosis tends to need to be the lighthouse throughout the course of our lives. I think that's an important distinction. I think that's the value of seeking treatment with a mental health professional is that we get trained to sort of distinguish the differences in the context. What kind of things can we expect to be pervasive? What is pervasive? What's the value of treatment compliance over the long haul? Versus, are we really talking about life change that can really address our anxiety and depression? I think there are some issues where they're gonna be longer term treatment issues. And in those issues, I think probably the mental health issue, the diagnosis, is valuable still long term. I think if we don't acknowledge that, then I think we're setting people up for failure. So it's a complex issue here. It's not as simple as, does it go away or doesn't it? I think what I ask people is, are you living a life that you're satisfied with, that's healthy? I think that is a road everyone can get on. And it's going to be a road that's really unique to you because your struggles are unique. But they're not alone. We're humans, we're dichotomous. Your struggles are unique, and I guarantee you there are people who have them in common. I think I would like people to begin to understand this process of moving from labeling back to lighthouse. This doesn't have to be who you are or what you are. It should be a way for you to get to shore in a place where you feel like there isn't a lot of hope. It should provide you hope. It should provide you help. I really hope people who are watching this think about how they're struggling in their mental health. Really spend some time in some contemplation of am I not getting help because I don't want a label? I would encourage you to talk to the people who you seek out help with. If you're in your therapist's office, tell your therapist that's a concern. You might be surprised. Your therapist might be really averse to labeling. Most therapists are. But they also might help you navigate the value of getting treatment that is focused, evidence-based, and effective. So I hope we're thinking about this in a different way in our culture. I hope that as our awareness of mental, emotional, and relational health grows and the struggles we're having, that we will not oversimplify and be aware of how to take kind of researched, informed, deep knowledge and bring it to people in the community in valuable, helpful ways, not in ways that weigh you down, not in ways that hurt you, not in ways that say, oh, I don't want that. I don't want that treatment. I don't want that help. Instead, what I hope is this helps you reconsider how to make this better for everyone, how to step away from labeling and step towards throwing lifelines, lighting lights, sending out boats, bringing people in. Thank you for your time.